All right, one of the most beloved GTs in the car world today is the Lexus LC500. What people love so much about that car is obviously the styling. It's a gorgeous car. Its performance has got 470 horsepower and it's got a naturally aspirated V8, which is something you just don't see in new performance cars nowadays, especially in the Grand Tourer segment. And you might be thinking that this is a Lexus LC500 in front of me, but it's actually something completely different, kind of. If we take a look to the back of the car here, you'll see that it says Lexus LC500H, and that's because this is a hybrid. This is the Lexus LC500 hybrid, and so essentially today's video is going to be figuring out Today's video is essentially going to be about exploring if you take away the NAV8, if you take away about 100-ish horsepower, is this car still worth buying? It's a very interesting car and probably the most niche GT you could possibly buy. There's really no other car that fits this exact specification as far as what it offers on paper. So let's dive in. This is the reason why no one is really checking for the LC500H versus the regular LC500. They've gotten rid of the V8, and what we have here is a 3.5 liter V6, which is found in a lot of other Toyota models mixed with an electric motor to give you what you have here. And it also costs more than the standard LC500. I figured that's worth mentioning. It costs more by about $3,000 or so. And so a lot of people aren't going to necessarily be down for a much more soulless experience in terms of how it drives, but we'll see a bit later if that really is the case. But with the V6 combined with the electric motors, you're getting about 354 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque combined. That's grand total output from the V6 and the electric motors, and about 4-ish miles of EV-only range. So it's definitely not a car you could just drive everywhere in EV-only mode and barely have to use the gas engine. But despite that, apparently this car can do almost 600 miles on a full tank. But is that really what you buy the LC500 for? Well, maybe some, but yeah, this is definitely more about efficiency than performance and fun driving. Despite it not having the most exciting powertrain under the hood, it's still an absolutely beautiful car. This silhouette is just chef's kiss. It's actually really, really great. And I love, honestly, the fact that you have these 21-inch rims on here wrapped around in Pilot Sport 5S's. So, you know, it grips very well. Not so much when it's cold because it's rear-wheel drive, but very good set of tires on this car. The overall look of this car is definitely still there. So, I mean, if your priorities are having a reliable power plant with that Toyota V6, which is known to be pretty solid and have a very elegant, timeless design that's comfortable on the inside, which, you know, we'll get into interior stuff a little bit later, this car still achieves that. Do you want to spend more money to achieve that with the LC500H? I guess that's really up to you. Let's talk about one of my few gripes with the LC500H, is that you don't get a powered trunk opening, which is kind of crazy. If this were, you know, a McLaren that was all about weight savings and being as light as humanly possible, I'd understand. But this is a luxury grand touring car that weighs well over 4,000 pounds. And so not having a powered trunk is kind of crazy. And then when you dig on the inside here, it is not spacious at all. You could fit like a few carry-ons in here, like 2 literally, and that's pretty much it. For me and my needs, this is like usable, but it's certainly not great given how like pretty decently big this car is. And so if you're looking for the most practical GT, this certainly is not it, unfortunately. You also don't get soft close, so you have to really like slam it shut like that to have it closed, which is kind of crazy for a GT, especially how much this costs. But let's take a look inside the LC500. Pretty interesting door opening mechanism. And let's step inside and really see what this thing is all about. Honestly, I like this interior. You've got a lot of really great materials. You got the suede, Alcantara type material, the leather, you have the two-tone, the red. And then you have one of the more interesting interiors you can get on a Lexus / Toyota today. These seats, very comfortable, very nice. They look very good, very comfy headrests. And then you have this really interesting center gauge that can actually slide around like the legendary Lexus LFA. And I'll show that in a second. But overall here, I like that this is a very nice combination of digital and physical controls. Let's go ahead and get this powered on. You're going to hear the engine come to life, even though I assumed it would be in EV mode. And then in a second, we're going to see our pretty typical Toyota infotainment boot up. You know, it's pretty much no different than what you would get on a regular Toyota or a high-end Lexus.
How can I help you?
And voice activation, which I've never actually seen active, but I guess I've never said the name brand of the car. But I'm good. I don't need any help. You can cancel. Please cancel. Let's see if it cancels. No?
Sorry, the network is currently busy. Please try again later.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for that. Between these really comfortable seats, you have the nice sunroof right up above me. We've got back seats, which, I mean, I'll try to get back there a little later, but they're usable, certainly more usable than like a 911 per se. But overall, I like this interior experience just sitting in here. But I don't know. I feel like at a certain price point, some things just can't be excused. And I've noticed with a lot of Lexuses that we've tested on the channel, the gauge cluster, you know, you have this cool little sliding gauge ring that if I click this button right here, it should move over to the side. Yeah, so if I click that button, moves over to the side, which is actually pretty sick. And then you can kind of go through this and have more performance stats about, you know, your electricity usage, your range, the hybrid system, G-forces, because I mean, you know, you might pull like, you know, 1/8 of a G in this thing, maybe. Your tire pressure. This is a really cool little sliding gauge cluster menu thing to have. But I don't know if you can tell, but that resolution just is, it's not great. It screams 480p, you know what I'm saying? And you have a really crisp, very high definition looking display right here. So then to go from this to that, it's just a little kind of off-putting to me, and really just kind of reminds you that you're still in a company that also makes $25,000 cars. As far as the primary screen you're going to be interacting with, it's nice, it's fluid, you've got wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and there's going to be very few times where you need to actually interact with the built-in Lexus software, but when you do, that works perfectly fine as well. And the only time I really need to interact with it is when I'm doing climate stuff, like changing my heated or cooled seats or turning on my heated steering wheel, because there's no button for that on the steering wheel, despite all these button spaces that I probably don't use. You have this view button if you want to see around you. It's got a very interesting setup here, kind of like this kind of PS2 style 3D camera parking system, which I mean is actually pretty accurate. It just caught the shadow of that car that drove by just then. I don't know if you just caught that, but if you've ever driven a Toyota or a Lexus in the past 2-3 years, this experience is going to be pretty much one-to-one with what you've experienced with all of those cars. As far as connectivity, you do have USB-C port right there, as well as a USB-A port right there. You have a little slot right here to just hold keys and stuff like that, and you can slide that forward to kind of hide that away. And right here where my water bottle is, which you can get at shopmkbhd.com, we have a single cup holder. But one thing that we're not seeing anywhere, at least not that I've found, I don't see one anywhere, is a wireless phone tray. And so you don't have one in here. You don't have one here. There's nothing right here. There's nothing right here. And so that's just a little disappointing to not have a wireless phone charger in a car like this, a car that's, generally speaking, decently spacious for the driver and front passenger. And so you'd figure they'd make room somewhere to have a nice dedicated spot to hold your phone. But I've usually just defaulted to having my phone where you see it right now, which is down there, because there isn't a wireless charging slot or just a natural place to put your phone anywhere in the car, which is a little disappointing. But I did say I was going to try to get in the back seat, so I'm pretty reluctant. But for science, we will do it. So you have a pull tab right here that we can kind of just, well, I'm gonna have to release the seat belt. Then we have this pull tab right here The seat automatically comes forward. And then I should be able to get in like this. Oh man, that roof line is crazy. Oh my God. Wow. I mean, I'm not like a crazy tall guy. I'm like just under 6 feet. And yeah, look at that. My head is like basically colliding with the roof. I have to literally lean down. Otherwise, my head just straight up collides with the roof. So I'm gonna put the seat back. See how that feels. Oh yeah, it's cramped. You see, you can, my toes are pretty much, they've disappeared under the seat. And yeah, my head is pretty much touching the glass right now. And so if there's any harsh bumps when driving this car, you might be concussed just a little bit. This is not great. And so the LC500 in H form and non-H form comes in a convertible spec as well. And so the back seats make much more sense when you have the convertible because there just won't be anything above your head. But if you have the coupe, yeah, I know Marquez would literally not fit back here. Try to get out of here. Oh man, that is not, yeah, because of this roofline situation, it's just not fun getting in or out of these seats. Yeah, not a fun time necessarily. And so interior experience overall is not terrible, right? There's some good things about it. It's comfortable. All the materials in here feel premium and put together very nicely. The speakers, they're all right. They're not like, they don't blow me away. I think they're just fine for a car like this. There's certainly other cars that would offer a better experience, like a BMW M850 would offer a better experience and costs kind of around in the same general price realm as this car. Infotainment is solid, no complaints there. The gauge cluster is just a little potato cami. That's really the only thing with that, but functionality-wise, everything in here works really well. I guess the only question now is, how does this car drive when you don't have the NA V8 and almost 500 horsepower to the wheels? Let's find out. Best thing about being inside the car now is that I no longer need my little windscreen soul patch, so you can stop staring at my chest now. Right now we've got it in Sport Plus mode just because there isn't a huge difference between comfort and sport outside of just gearing and I guess the aggressiveness of the powertrain, obviously. But let's take a listen to that sound. Let's see, let's get some sound action going. This has a very interesting sound. It's going, it doesn't exactly sound like a naturally aspirated high revving V8. It doesn't have the most pleasant sound I've experienced in any car of this price segment ever. And the gearing is also a very interesting thing here. So this car has two transmissions, like a lot of new hybrids do. You have, firstly, a CVT, which has essentially 6 virtual gears, and then you have another traditional 4-speed automatic that is providing 4 real gears. And so on the gauge cluster here, it says you've got 10 gears total between the two transmissions, one of them being a pretty crappy CVT and the other one being a 4-speed automatic. And so shifting in this car feels absolutely soulless. It feels like literally nothing. It might as well be an EV. I feel more engaged shifting gears in the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which does not have any. So it's not the most engaging car in terms of going up and down in the gearbox, but I don't think that's what it's about. I don't think you're really supposed to put this car in manual mode at all. In fact, Lexus has what they're calling AI shift logic or something like that to essentially determine what gears the car should be in, even in Sport Plus mode and things like that, which, I mean, that's just a fancy way of saying, hey, this is an automatic. But whatever you want to say, Toyota. I will say, though, it's technically not that much slower than the V8 powered LC500, and that's because it's still rear-wheel drive, so you don't have crazy off-the-line performance, and neither does the V8 powered LC500. You're working with about a 4.7 second 0 to 60, which is literally 0.1 seconds slower than the V8 version. There's not that big of a difference here, but because it's rear-wheel drive, you could slide it just a little bit. So, you know, if you've got it in first gear, and I mean only first gear, you can do, you know, some power slides and things like that. But regardless, that is not what this car is about by any means. Man, I just can't get over how just like not good that V6 sounds. In terms of handling, the car isn't bad. I think the steering feel is as dead as a doorknob, to be quite honest, but technically it's not a bad handler. You've got a pretty solid suspension setup that is certainly more comfort oriented than performance driving oriented, but it takes a corner decently well. Granted, if it's a little cold, the tires might spin up on you a little bit if you're taking it at a slightly higher speed, but overall handling is pretty, I don't want to say sharp, but assertive. Comfort is really why you buy a car like this. Comfort and decent straight line performance. And yeah, it does the comfort part very well. Yeah, he likes to slide a little bit, but it's very resistant to do so. So while I swim through this sea of pickup trucks, let's talk about who this car is for and what the competitors are in this price range. So if we're talking about a 2+2 GT coupe, on the higher end of this price range, we're looking at base model 911s or a 911 Cabriolet. On the lower end of that price bracket, you're looking at BMW, not M8s, but M850i, basically the M Sport coupe 2+2 version of the 8 Series in either coupe or convertible form. Honestly, I'd probably buy either one of those cars before this one, just because I don't need the hybrid stuff. And with an extended range fuel tank in a 911, you could easily do 500 miles on a full tank in one of those cars. And that's basically the same case for here, but except you're getting a much more more balanced driving experience, for one. It also is going to be a car that holds more value. It's also a car that I think just sounds better and is just built a little bit better than this. Has a much higher quality tech in the car. And then that BMW M850i is just going to be so much faster than this car. Those cars have about 550 something horsepower, and it's gonna definitely feel like it. This car gets up there. You can easily get to 100 miles an hour without really thinking about it, but you don't feel anything when you're doing so, and so that's like the part of the car that feels just very soulless to me. We also have to reiterate the fact that this car costs more than the V8 version, which a lot of people would argue is the better car overall. If you're so worried about, you know, efficiency, you probably wouldn't buy a car like the LC500 anyway. There's plenty of other Lexuses and Toyotas that offer really incredible efficiency. But if you want to just break it down to the bare minimum specs, right? Rear wheel drive, V6 hybrid, 2+2 coupe, there really is nothing else that offers exactly that experience, especially one with the weird 2-transmission CVT plus a 4-speed setup. There's really nothing that offers an experience like that. And so it is kind of hard to compare it to other cars that on paper are similar but not exactly the same, just because of how unique this overall package is. But if you're looking for something that might have the reliability of a Toyota, with really great styling, comfortable interior, solid efficiency, and you don't care about losing performance and fun factor with that V8, and don't also need rear-wheel drive. Basically, if you're like an old person in Florida who doesn't want a V8 but still wants something that looks good, but is still wanting to spend over 100 grand and doesn't want a Porsche or a BMW or something else, then this car, I guess, fits the bill. It drives nicely. I think the transmission setup and the motor sound, they're kind of weird. But outside of that, the car drives nicely. It's not a bad driving car overall. It just isn't really fun in any sense. But that's pretty much it for this one. This is a weird car, and I would really hope if you were to buy this that you wouldn't buy it brand new and buy one that's like used for probably tens of thousands of dollars less. But very interesting experience. One of the most interesting hybrid cars I think we've ever tested on the channel for sure. All right, that's about it for this one. If you enjoyed, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for future content like this. Talk to you guys in the next one.